Hi there and welcome back, my dear fellow scholars. Today we're going to look at multimodal neurons in artificial neural networks by Gabriel Go, Nick Camarada, Chelsea Voss, Shan Carter, Michael Petrov, Ludwig Schubert, Alec Radford, and Chris Olah that has appeared in this DistilPub journal, which I think is a pretty cool journal going beyond the classic PDF publishing. So this paper is an investigation into the new CLIP model by OpenAI, and specifically the discovery of what they call multimodal neurons in this model. So this is an investigative work. They work with visualizations, and I've made a video about both the CLIP model as well as the feature visualizations that has appeared previously. So safe to say, what they are claiming as the high-level claim here is that in biology, we sort of expect there to be neurons that respond not to individual patterns or to individual words, but to concepts. So there could be a concept neuron of Halle Berry, as you can see here. And that neuron would respond to photographs of Halle Berry, to drawings and sketches of Halle Berry, and also to text. So if we see the text, the rasterized text, or we hear the word, that neuron, that same neuron would fire. Now, so far in artificial neural networks, we had not seen this kind of multimodal perception. So we have seen neurons responding in general to the same class of images because we train them as image classifiers, but we have not seen that generalize to other modalities such as drawings or text. What they find in this CLIP model right here is that exactly what we expect in humans or in general in biological neural networks, that happens. So they find, for example, a neuron that responds to Spider-Man. That is, photos of Spider-Man in the real world or some person in a Spider-Man costume, drawings of Spider-Man, and also text that says spider. So that would the neuron would respond to all of these things, the same neuron. And that is a sort of sign that these models have learned to connect the different modalities together. We've already discussed in the CLIP video that the model sort of learns to do OCR, so it learns to recognize text because the CLIP model is fundamentally a model that connects images to text. And my claim here is going to be that this addition of text, the model I think is very much a text model. So a lot of the connection it makes go via the textual level, and a lot of the responses you're going to see here, the visualizations, are going to deal with text rather than with images. So here you can see what this neuron responds to. If you thought it was the spider web, here, no, there's spider as a text, spider here, spider there, drawings of Spider-Man. So this neuron would respond to all of these things, which is pretty cool. So what they do, what they present here is an overview over the different neurons they find. And as I understand it, what they have done is they've gone through these neurons and they use their feature visualization technique with every single one of them. So I can show you what that looks like. This is the OpenAI microscope, and you can find that, and this is the exact model they're looking at. So what you can do is you can simply click around in these neurons over here, and then these are the visualizations right here. So now the visualizations are twofold. So on the left hand, you have channel optimization. On the right hand, you have neuron optimization. We've treated them in a previous video if you want to know how they come about. But for now, what you should know is that these are images that activate that particular neuron or that particular channel very much. So these images activate this particular thing in the neural network, but not other things. So this is a way to see what these neurons respond to heavily. So here you can see on the left, you often have kind of patternish structures. On the right, you more have kind of in the center individual things. So maybe it's not really clear what this is. So what they also portray is data samples from the ImageNet dataset that activate mostly that particular neuron. So you can pretty clearly see that this responds to popsicle ice cream. Now they also have a different data set down here. There is a Flickr Creative Commons, and very much the same. You see this is kind of ice and ice cream. And at the bottom, you have text that goes along with it. So here it's not really ice cream. So this is a bit of a failure case, but you always have to keep in mind that it could also be because of the lack in power in searching for text. So what they do down here is they have a search algorithm that finds pieces of text that that neuron responds to highly. So text that maximizes the dot product. So in the clip model, you have an image part, you have a text part, and you have a dot product at the end. So this is text that when you input it to the text part, maximizes the dot product with that particular neuron. So it's not always going to be, really good text, but very often it can give you a hint in what the neuron thinks. Note that this isn't the same text as we're going to see later, like the text that you saw in Spider-Man, because the text you saw in Spider-Man, that was rendered text. So they do a lot of investigation into rendered text because the clip model is quite good at responding to rendered text in the image side. All right, so they look at these neurons. Literally, I think they just click here on the left, boom, and you look at them. So this seems to be like a hamburger pancake neuron. And it is, I did this for hours, and I'll show you later what I found. This is absolutely fascinating what you'll find here by just clicking through, and every now and then you find something like, yeah. All right, but let's get back to the paper first. So the paper, they find region neurons, so neurons that respond to different regions of the world. For example, the USA. Now, they not only do they have this visualization technique for kind of the whole image, they have faceted visualization. So in this paper, they introduce faceted visualization, which they can produce specifically faces that are that respond to USA. They can produce specifically indoor things. So this is all the same neuron. These are images that are made such that they represent indoor scenes, and there is an appendix if you want to know how that's done. They can trim it to only produce nature pictures that this particular neuron responds to. So here you can get a much better insight into what the neuron looks at. For example, if you create faces for the USA, this is, I don't know, I call this one Benjamin Washington, because it's a sort of a blend of Ben Franklin and George Washington. But in general, it's pretty cool. So you can even, nature, you can do pose for North America, pose for the US, I think that's kind of a GI, a pose for Europe. I don't know what that is, but it doesn't always, work out super well. But they find person neurons, so neurons that respond to individual people, be that faces, be that text. So this is Donald Trump, be that poses. Yeah. Elvis is also pretty cool. I've actually found, I don't know if I found the Elvis neuron myself or if I found a different one. So they also have emotion neurons, which is also pretty cool, where they find neurons that respond to particular emotions. So when they tell these neurons, when they make a faceted reconstruction and tell, please give me a face, this is what comes out. And that, is just shocking. And when you do something like a pose for shocked, this, I think we're only scratching the surface here, honestly. But you can see the claim here. The claim is that the same neuron responds to this picture and to this picture. This is supposed to be text. You can only guide it. You can't, force it. To this picture, indoor, to this picture. So the same neuron will respond to all of these, and they call that multimodal neuron because it represents a concept, the concept of being shocked, rather than in a particular fine-grained pattern, which was always the kind of problem so far with these neural networks, that they were more looking at low-level patterns than high-level concepts. It seems by combining modalities like images and text, and by not forcing this constraint like in a classifier into 1,000 predefined classes, we can gain much more. We can go up the hierarchy of features. So they have art style, they have holiday neurons, religion neurons, person trait neurons, abstract concept neurons. The star, I found the star. I remember. Time neurons, counting neurons, pairs of fours. They are not always so super good, but it clearly goes into the good direction. So here they highlight specific things. First, person neurons. So they find neurons that respond, for example, to Jesus Christ. So they would respond to all of these images here on the right. You see the crosses, Jesus Christ, and so on, depictions of Jesus, drawings of Jesus. And when you ask the model to generate you an image that reconstructs this neuron's activation, and you can force it or you guide it to make a face, this turns out, if you guide it to make a pose, this turns out a logo, obviously. They also have Hitler right here, which is also pretty cool, though if you click on these things, you'll get actually to the microscope thing, and this is the one for Hitler, and I'm not entirely sure that this is the case. Like, I can see the kind of mustachy thing, but if you look at what in the data set activates this one, it is a bunch of swastikas, but it is also just a bunch of kind of German political stuff. But yeah, I mean the concept here, even if it's not Hitler directly, is pretty cool. I also found that domain endings rendered as images will activate the same neuron as the flag of that country and activate the same neuron as like the architecture of that country. It is super duper interesting. All right, so they have these person neurons, which is already cool. And they've found these. They do a case study here for the Donald Trump neuron. So the Donald Trump neuron recognizes Donald Trump, and then they want to see what images in the data set activate this neuron by how much. So they make the claim here that if you, for example, choose profile pictures of Donald Trump, and you see here is the 0 line, and here is the standard deviations from zero activation. So pictures of Donald Trump activate this neuron like 30 times more than it is activated over the whole data set, which makes sense if that neuron responds to Donald Trump, but it also responds to art images containing Donald Trump. By the way, these are classified by the authors here. They've gone through the images and they've classified them into these categories. Text containing Donald Trump's name, the model also strongly responds with the same neuron, right? That's the crazy part. So a picture with text in it that says Trump activates the same neuron as a profile picture of Trump, activates the same neuron as a MAGA hat, and activates sometimes the same neuron as political images, activates, if you look at games and music and so on, that neuron is very deactivated. So not only is it 0, it's actually negative, which the authors interpreted as sort of being counter to that in the space of all concepts. This paper is full of these kind of content warnings. It might be disturbing and so on, which you can do. But I also find the rest of the paper is kind of a fairly large hedge against certain things, and it gets political at times. For example, when they want to claim that. So here, on the other hand, it most negatively activates to musicians like Nicki Minaj and Eminem, video games like Fortnite, civil rights activists like Martin Luther King Jr., and LGBT symbols like rainbow flags. So the games and the Fortnite here, yes, we can see that, but if you click on this, and they have 4 images of this, you can see that it's activated at relatively low negative magnitudes, which is correct, but then it is also almost equally activated over here at high magnitudes. So like, I see the point you're trying to make, but I mean, if you are in the political sphere, this is not, you have to not interpret this as meaning that these things are kind of aligned, but you have to interpret it as these things will appear together often, which, you know, one can definitely understand in this case. So here they search for profile pictures of other people, including Donald Trump himself, and they plot how much these profile pictures of other people activate the Trump neuron. And you can see that, for example, Pence activates this neuron by quite a bit. I think, the selection here is, you know, up to the authors, of course, but it's fairly interesting to see that Clinton, Cruz, and Obama activated more than Hitler, and almost as much as Steve Jobs for some reason. So I'm not entirely sure what you can make of this, but it's definitely interesting on this side, like to observe the multimodality of pictures. Just the fact that text, drawings, symbols of that campaign, and profile pictures will all activate the same neuron. That is fairly impressive. They go on and they identify emotion neurons. So again, there's a content warning, by the way, also here. So here they identify a neuron that responds to surprise or shock. And you can see that all of these pictures on the right will activate that neuron. So there are faces being shocked, there are horses being shocked, and there is rendered text saying like WTF, OMG, and so on. Again, I think we've gone through this. This is the shocked one. There are also secondary neurons that help, let's say, help the primary emotion neurons. So here you can see an overview over the different emotion neurons they have found, and it is pretty stunning. So here they ask them, obviously, to create a face when they they guide them towards making poses. By the way you guide them is they train linear probe classifiers on separate data sets. So they would train a classifier on a face data set to distinguish all faces from all non-faces, and then use that classifier to sort of guide this reconstruction process. That's how you can sort of choose to end up with a face or with a pose or with a piece of text. So as you can see, it's pretty cool that even the text that comes out of this reconstruction process, these aren't real images, right? These are kind of reconstructed to activate those neurons. Like for evil, you can see that there's devil and Satan. For shocked, it's like OMG. For happy, it's happy. If you look at the poses, for happy, for serious, evil is particularly cool. Incarcerated, rejected. I think this is absolutely cool. There is the NSFW, there are erotic neurons. And if I click on this, it will show. Now, if you click on this, absolutely nothing not safe for work will happen. I promise. I don't promise, but you know, I've tried it. It's fine. I will not click on it because if this model thinks that's not safe for work, the YouTube algorithm will think it's not safe for work. So, but what I can tell you is that if you go on that neuron and you click through it to go to the microscope and you look at what ImageNet pictures respond to that neuron heavily, you'll find out that ImageNet isn't the really clean dog breed data set that you might have known. All right, they found other neurons corresponding to silly facial expressions like duck faces and tongue showing and so on, which is pretty neat. And they find this neuron that corresponds to mental illness, which the reconstruction is just amazing. Like, this is just mind-baffling. Nature kind of always looks the same, but mental illness, let's say face, it's crazy how this model connects things, and it connects these things to books and writings of sad mental health, anxiety, and so on. Now, do I think the model understands what a mental illness is? No, I don't think so. I think, much like in GPT-3, it has learned to statistically associate things. So it has learned that there might be, and I think that happens via the textual input. So in clip, for every image, you have a piece of text. And I think the connection between the topics happens on the textual level because the text descriptions are the same between images. So there'll be images of people, cowering like this, being sad, and the textual description for it would be something like mental illness, anxiety, sadness. And then for these pictures of these books as well, the descriptions would be, this one is literally called Overcoming Anxiety. So if the picture is of a book and the description says what is on the picture, obviously that text will be connected. So I think that's how it learns to connect things, via the text. And I think this thing is in large part a text model. So here they do the same study for images that are associated with mental illness. So depression, sad pictures, like anxiety pictures, are pretty high. Depressing jokes, if you look at music and sports, that's negatively activated, and so on. So you can see that I think via the text, the model can sort of learn about how different concepts, different things, different patterns are connected to one another. They have region neurons, which I find pretty cool. So they discover neurons that when they show them a crop of this world map, this world map, when they show them a crop of the world map, the neuron will respond, the neuron will flare up. And so the neuron, this red neuron here that reacts to these pieces of text, and now it reacts to the pieces of text when they are rendered into images, right? Then the neuron responds. If you render the word American in an image and then you give it to the network, that neuron will flare up. The same neuron will flare up if you show it a crop of this region here of the map, which is crazy, like crazy. Again, I think the connection happens in the textual domain, but still crazy. You can have it do face facets for these different regions. If you go over here, so the neuron that responds to this blue area responds to the rendered words Mumbai, Singh, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and responds strongly. Or if you make reconstructions that activate that neuron, you get these kinds of pictures, which is fairly cool. The same here for Europe. So this is kind of European, and that looks like home. So check this out a bit for yourself, but it's immensely cool. They even find these secondary regional neurons that aren't exactly regional, but they also respond to crops of this map, and they highlight this entrepreneur neuron that it responds to sort of the words entrepreneur, entrepreneurial, and it kind of looks like these company logos a little bit, I guess, but the model that responds to the word entrepreneur lights up when you show it the west coast of the US, kind of the California region. Interestingly, it also lights up when you show it the west coast of the southern African continent, which is cool. Like, that's definitely unexpected. I don't know. I'm not informed enough to know whether or not there is significant entrepreneurial drive going on there. Could also be that the model simply confuses the west coasts of the two countries, right? Like, they look in a crop, they look the same. Could be. I don't know. So maybe I'm wrong. It's also interesting that only these regions light up, right? If for this particular neuron. So I have my doubts whether that's just kind of a lucky cherry pick. I'm not saying it's cherry picked, but kind of like you stumble upon and you make something of it or not. They have more case study of African kind of subdivisions, and let's go down here. Here is where they discuss that they can also produce text for the text side of clips. So not only do they render, and this text here is what you're going to see. The maximal text aligned with an image, or with a neuron, sorry, is what you're going to see at the bottom of the microscope pages. So lastly, they kind of make a sparse code out of their main neurons that they find, and they try to build more complex emotions from them. For example, jealous, and they do claim here that makes sort of a bit of sense. Like, jealous is champion plus hug plus grumpy minus crying. I'm not exactly sure if that makes super much sense. So bored is relaxing plus grumpy. Maybe. Yeah. Intimate is soft smile plus heart minus sick. You can probably make something out of that, though. Yeah, powerful is lightning miracle plus evil plus yoga. That's definitely the case. Do check it out. It is very interesting to look at some of those things, even though I think it does not make terrible much sense, but in often cases. But stressed being success plus mental disorder plus pink objects, maybe. But it is more kind of, it is not claimed that this is kind of an absolute thing. It's more an investigation into these networks. If you lay them out in sort of a 2D surface, you can see that these emotion neurons, they come pretty close to sort of an atlas of what people, when we just use two factors, we roughly reconstruct the canonical mood axis used in much of psychology, valence and arousal. So you can divide these emotions into two things. So there is valence, which is good or bad. So I think that's top bottom here. So here's mad, angry, hostile, and so on. Maybe not. No, top bottom is probably valence, like how strong something is, and then left, right might be good and bad. No, also not. Here, insecure, inspired, aroused, awful, sad. Well, these are all bad. No, hostile is here, appalled is here, and horrified is here. Where are you happy? In the middle, maybe. Creative, okay. Happy is here. Also, it might not be exactly axis aligned, right? You can also divide it into 7 factors. We nearly reconstruct a well-known categorization of these emotions into happy, surprised, bad, disgusted, fearful, and angry, except with disgusted switched for a new category related to affection that includes valued, loving, lonely, and insignificant. All right, so this next piece is real funny. What they do is, so given clip, you can build a classifier. So if you have the clip model that connects images to text, what you can do is you feed one image and then you give it a bunch of texts to choose from. And whichever one it responds highest with, that's kind of the class. So if you provide the class labels as text, you can build a zero-shot classifier. Now, Clip paper has demonstrated that that works well. So here they do this. So they have this apple right here, and the label is correctly apple. But if they just slap a sticker on it that says iPod, the clip model will switch to iPod. And here is where I really think that this model, it is a textual model. It responds even to rendered text. It responds very heavily. So here it responds to this iPod library. Like this iPod looks like something I bought off Craigslist last week. So you can see it works like almost every single time. You just slap a label on it. And that tells me that we are still like the text might be too dominant in these models, especially, these models, they will connect the text with rendered text in the image, and that's a very strong signal for what's in the image, right? This is only zero shot though. If you switch this to do linear probe, so if you actually train a linear probe on the representation of clip, then these attacks don't work anymore. So this is going back again to sort of the old school deep learning approach where you actually train a classifier. And once you train, it picks up on other features, and then it doesn't work anymore. All right. So they evaluate this on a large scale. They can't always slap a label, so they just fill the image with rendered text, and that usually gets the classifier confused fairly well. They also do this with this Stroop test, which you can do with humans, which is fairly difficult if you do it at a high speed. And they discover that the model basically pays no attention whatsoever to the color of the word. It pays much more attention to what the word says, which is strange, right? Because you'd think if I have a neural network and it basically needs to recognize the color here, it needs to filter out the white pixels, but then just average the pixels. It gets the correct answer. That's so easy, right? It simply averages. Whereas to recognize that this says green is much more difficult. But the model was trained to connect text and images which often have text in them, so it has learned to do OCR basically. In the Dolly video, I claimed that Dolly has learned to do reverse OCR, and people correctly pointed out that that is more aptly called writing. But I love reverse OCR. I'm going to call writing from now on reverse OCR. So again, this is evidence for the claim that this is mostly a textual model. And now I want to show you what I found. So if you're not in the mood, I have all this in a Notion page, which I'll link down below. So I'll show you just some interesting stuff. Sometimes it's multimodal, sometimes it's not, right? So we already were here. We just clicked around, but now I want to kind of show you the good stuff. So this is a Superman neuron that I found. So it responds, as you can see, to symbols of Superman in the ImageNet dataset. Superman, Superman drawings, Superman comics, Superman spelled out, rendered, and so on. This is exactly kind of what the article was about, right? But now it's Superman, not Spider-Man. This I call the resting bee face neuron. So it responds to people being slightly annoyed. Yeah, as you can see. Here, this is trash bags. So this responds to trash bags. Pretty cool, right? So not any kind of bag, right? Specifically trash bags, even if they are not black. So there are a couple in there that aren't necessarily black. There is even trash cans, like containers right here that have no bag in sight, yet still that neuron responds. This, sorry about that. Yeah, for some reason, you might want to, I don't know, maybe you have something in your pockets. Yeah, so fairly cool. Oh, there's a tree. is not always, perfect, but these are the dataset examples that most excite that neuron. So you can also see the text isn't always good, though I think if the text here isn't super good, it might more be an effect of this method to search text, because text is, of course, not a continuous signal, so it's fairly hard to search text that maximizes some activation. Otherwise, we could build GANs for text very easily, which we still can't. This one here, I've titled this Strength and Allah and Weightlifting, which I'm aware this is not, iconography of Allah. However, so this is pretty cool as an image, right? Now, if you look at what in the data set, what samples it responds to, it's kind of all weightlifting. It's all weights. So this is weight. And if you go down here to the other data set, this is why I called it sort of Allah, because you have also rendered names, like the rendered Allah, you have the Quran, you have symbols of Islam. And if you go to the text that it searches, it goes like hammer workout, Prophet Zana in lumbar iron gym, the brutal workout of God. So, pretty cool neuron, honestly. And, that it responds with this, I don't even know what that is. Is that Hindu imagery or Buddhist imagery? So cool. These are organs. This is an organ neuron. I hope you can see that. And it responds to the rendered text of control. I don't know what to make of it. Also canal viral, but also to drawings. You can see here a drawing of a heart. For some reason also chins. So it's not always super duper clear what a neuron does. In fact, most of these neurons you will find if you go look at what ImageNet samples, and these, I believe these are crops of ImageNet samples, not entire pictures. So if you look at what, by the way, control and CTRL, if you look at what examples, most often it will be rendered text. So that no matter what neuron, most neurons actually pay attention to rendered text rather than to images. The ones I've selected are the ones that do not, but if you just go and click on some random neuron, we can actually try, and it's certainly going to probably fail. This one looks pretty cool, Actually, that responds to printers. Yep, demonstration effect fails horribly. How about this one? Yeah, so you can see that, maybe you don't exactly know what that is. So you want to look at what, so here you see that it primarily responds to the text miss, I guess, MISS. I miss you, Mississippi, and so on. Mississippi having it twice in there. That got to respond pretty heavily. And most of the time you'll find something like this, that it responds very much to the rendered pieces of text in images. These are film spools. And so not only does it respond to film spools, but also to things like director screening, popcorn, the kind of movie theater labeling, showing, Hollywood, cinemas. There's also entertainment. So, the multimodality, again, this is a phenomenon because we introduced the text and it can connect it on the text level. This is feather patterns and leaf patterns. So even when it's in coffee, you see the feather and leaf patterns, even when it's a drawing, it will still respond. This one is strange. So this responds to things like Sparta and Front and Troy, but so it responds to rendered front, Trojan, Spartans, front, and it also has a lot of people doing sort of squats, as you can see, so and fighting. So this is kind of an iron So this is a bit of kind of a warrior neurons. You can see, oh, there's lots of, of course, it's because of these Spartan runs and all. They're called like this, right? These kind of sporting events. I see Roman frontside, Roman. So it connects the workout with the Spartan workout kind of division, and then it connects the Trojan and so on via the text, because it makes no sense to connect like the vodka and the weightlifting, maybe. I don't know. So yeah, I hope you're fairly convinced by now. We're going to go a bit faster now because the video is already too long. But this one here is the letter E. So it's E. So it responds again to rendered text of E. This one here is cleaning. So it responds to cleaning products and cleaning things. This one here is frown. So this is frowning, grumpy face. Lion, responding to lions, rendered text of lions, team names called lions, and so on. Fashion model. By the way, the labels are mine. I just looked at them and decided what they are. But you can see, like, there's a lot of these kind of runway shots here. Baseball stadium. So cool. So these are kind of top views of baseball stadium, but it responds a lot to things saying park, PNC Park, AT&T Park, but also kind of home team, park lights, and baseball dugouts, and even players. I've seen some players, logos of teams, baseball, depictions of actual baseballs. It's immensely cool. Here, bride. This is bride. You can see this is bride. This one, what do you think? This one is navy. So super cool that it kind of connects these ropes with the emblems, the kind of your tags. So, and it connects it to render text saying navy, right? So these are the crops of images that it responds to. Navy officers, Navy gravestones. Yeah, so cool. This one, okay. For this, I also had to look at sort of the pictures here and the text going along with it. This is hemp, but it is also kind of Goa patterns. It is also, for some reason, turn or earn. It is also Hendrix. So this isn't even Jimi Hendrix, right? Like this is definitely connected. So this is Goa shirts. There's pictures of Jimi Hendrix, which I guess you can understand. There is also turn again. There's Bob. No, this is Bob Marley. Sorry, this Bob Marley. Yeah, so it connects these things. Staircase. And here, for some reason, it also responds to text rendered human and to staircases. And here I don't know why, but there's this thing, which I'm not sure. So it has human in it, but it is also arranged like a staircase. So maybe that's why it responds extra. Yeah, the Disney neuron. This is a Disney neuron. How cool is this? So you can clearly see that, but then Disney, these are the samples that it responds to, simply something saying Disney, the Mickey Mouse ear, the Minnie bow, immensely cool. The castle, right? The Disney castle. This is the Hillary Clinton neuron. You can see, this is Hillary. And the images it responds to is Hillary, hill, pill, Polly, hills. So this is maybe it's more like the LLY, the ILLY neuron, but it does pick out Hillary Clinton as well. Yeah, so ImageNet, of course, is older than at least one of Hillary's campaigns. I'm not sure. This is God. So I found this one. This is, yeah, God. So the reconstruction process is not very good at generating text, maybe because, so they have a lot of priors in that. If you look at the reconstruction article, you can probably, and they do this in this article, they reconstruct text, but it's still not super clear. Maybe it has to do with the architecture. This here is blurry. It's just the concept of blurry. So you look at the images, they're kind of often blurry. And if you look at the text going along with it, it's all like blurry, 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 blurry. Cool. Like it's not even what's on the image, but you can clearly see like this comes via the description. This is hand-drawn arrows or arrows in general. This looks like my videos now, right? Like this recognizes arrows, specifically kind of colory arrows. This one, what does it do? This is presenting a trophy. You see this one here in the middle? This is kind of, so these are all, people presenting some kind of thing, holding some kind of thing in their hand, showing it, like fishermen or diplomas. This one I was amazed by. This is a neuron responding to receding hairlines. Like it responds to receding hairlines. How cool is that? How cool is that? This is traffic, tent, and so on. So it responds to tents and traffics and crowds of people. This one is raised arms, but also pancakes. So pancakes and raised hands. For some reason, there's a connection. No, but I mean, these models, they still overload when they can. This one, how cool is that? This is the Google Maps neuron. These are reconstructions. These are not samples. These are reconstructions. You can see it's clearly, it has kind of the street labels and the pins on it. So this is a Google Maps like neuron. What? So cool. This one I call nervous smile. You can maybe see that. It's like, yeah, Here's Elvis. This is the Elvis neuron. I know it also looks like Hendrix a bit, but the things it connects it to is, that's not Elvis. That's not Elvis. Kiss. Okay, maybe it's not exactly Elvis. Maybe it's more like a pop star neuron. Yeah, maybe it's not Elvis. Only Elvis. Billy Elliot. This one is the Flash, right? That's the Flash. And the cool thing is, it responds to images saying Flash. What? Okay, beards. Responds to beards. Generally, beards. Lots of beards. Kilts. Kilts and bagpipes. Responds to kilts and bagpipes. Rainy. This is a neuron that responds to things that are rainy days. So you can see here out the window, it's raining, rainy windows. So cool. This is flash and electricity. So you'll see like symbols, these symbols of these flashes, but also kind of electric hair curling up. Droplets. How cool does that look? Like, that's just cool. And the occasional ImageNet reconstruction thing where there must be like half a dog face in there. That is just trippy. This one is escape. Okay? Escape. Like, look at that. Like, to connect these things, how long would you, like, without contrastive learning, how? Well, I guess as long as you have images and labels, but still. King, this is king. So the depicted are crowns, but responds to renderings of king. This is nation. How cool is that? Nation. Responds to country. Oh, it's country, not nation, but still. This one responds to overweight men. There's a neuron that responds to faces of overweight men. This one is wedding. This one is Australia. And the cool thing here is that it responds to rendered domain names of Australia, like the top level domain of Australia. What? Mind blown. This is yawning or screaming. So, you know, like here we have a same neuron for bees and the Simpsons. Bees and the Simpsons. This is mussels and seafood. And lastly, spices. Spices and other powdery things. You know, don't ask too many questions. All right, so that was it from me for today. I have many more that are linked in a Notion description somewhere. Go check it out. Please try out this. I've not yet looked through all of them. There are so many. There are literally thousands of these units, and this is just one of the models they have available. Go look and share, you know, on our Discord, you know, the best ones you find. All right, that was it. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.